Hare Krishna. Don't just hear the mind, mind what you hear. Hear the mind means to listen to the inner voice of the mind and to act accordingly. The mind often says, come on, enjoy this, come on, do that, come on, look at that, come on, eat this. So the mind often prompts us to do various things. And quite often, the mind prompts us to waste our time in petty things, seeking small pleasures and missing out on the big things in life, because we are so caught in the petty things that we lose out. We have no attention, we have no time left for the big things in life. The mind distracts us. Just like a child does not understand what is important and what is not important, the mind often skews our sense of what is important and makes us waste our time on the trivial. So if we just hear whatever the mind says, then we will not be able to do important things in life, but we will waste a lot of our time in trivial things. And sometimes the mind takes us, if we just hear the mind uncritically, then the mind prompts us to do not just petty or trivial things. It sometimes makes us do dirty and injurious things. It prompts us towards sinful activities also. So there is a voice inside us, but that voice of the mind which prompts us from inside is not something which we should hear uncritically or submissively. Don't hear the mind, rather mind what you hear. Mind what you hear means, here the word mind refers to be careful, to be discerning. So mind what you hear, that means be discerning about what you hear. So we hear various things from within. Within there is the voice of God, but there is also the voice of the mind. So the Supreme Lord is present within our heart, and He speaks as inspiration, He speaks as conscience. But along with that, there is the voice of the mind also. So mind what you hear. That means we have to evaluate carefully what we are hearing, whose voice is prompting us, and if we do not carefully evaluate this, then we will be misled by the mind. Now how do we mind what you hear? That is, we have to have some reference point, and that reference point is Shastra. So when we of course we hear Shastra through the words of Guru and Sadhu. We learn Shastra and its practical applications through those who are living according to Shastra. Those who have molded their lives according to Shastra, they teach us how best to live according to Shastra. So we learn Shastra from them, and through Shastra we get a reference point by which to evaluate the inner voices. When Krishna speaks from within, He generally speaks in harmony with the broad principles that He has taught in scripture. Whereas the mind often prompts us to do things which are in negligence of scripture, and sometimes even in violation of scripture. So to mind what you hear, we need to regularly study scripture, and after studying scripture, we keep the broad message of scripture in mind. And after keeping the message of scripture in mind, then we look at whatever the inner voice tells us. And what the inner voice is telling, if the inner voice tells us to do something which is anti-scriptural, then we check and double check, and then we check ourselves. Check means evaluate, double check means evaluate again, and then check means stop ourselves. No, we will not do this thing. So if the inner voice is telling us to do something which is according to scripture, then we do it. So in this way we can actually apply the principle that Krishna tells us in the Bhagavad-gita: Uddharedatmanatmanam natmanam avasadayet atmaiva hi atmano bandhur atmaiva ripuratmanaha. So Uddharedatmanatmanam, elevate yourself with the mind and don't degrade yourself. Natmanam avasadaye atmaiva hi atmano bandhur. That the mind can be the friend of the mind, and the mind can be the enemy of the mind also. So just as sometimes if a war is going on, and at that time some signals are coming through the radio. Now, how do we know whether the signal is coming from a friend or it's coming from an enemy? And the signal is coming, usually there are some check codes. And we can of course see whether that particular person is speaking, knows some password, knows some confidential code which are known only to the allies and not to the enemies. So just as there is a criteria in military to discern the voice of the enemy from the voice of the friend, similarly we need to have a criteria for discerning the voice of the mind from the voice of the Supreme Lord within. And that discernment comes by studying Shastra. So don't just hear the mind, that means don't think of whatever is spoken from inside that is actually the voice of God telling me to do something. No, mind what you hear. We evaluate carefully whatever is the voice coming in, and that which is according to Shastra, we accept that, and that is against Shastra, we reject that. And in that way we can make healthy choices and move towards success all around in our life. Thank you. Hare Krishna.